audio and visual podcast, a weekly discussion about all things guitar building and some random tangents as well, featuring members of the Guitar Builders Collective from all around the world. The Guitar Builders Collective is a like-minded group of individuals that have come together to share their experiences, knowledge, and inspiration for guitar building. Each week you can join us in the live YouTube chat or catch up at a later point. It's also available as audio, where you'll miss out on seeing our lovely faces and some of the visuals we share along the way. You can also find the Guitar Builders Collective via our forum, over on Instagram, where we share images of members' builds. We've got a thriving Facebook group, and we do hope that no matter what your experience and knowledge is, you'll become a welcome member of this community too. Fantastic. Welcome everyone. Hi. So look, for those of you that are watching, you can see who we are. You'll see there's three of us you'll recognise, and we've got a guest on this week who's someone that's new to the collective. But for those of you listening, you won't know. So I'll do a quick introduction. We've got Mark Gutierrez from Texas over there. And also from Texas, just below him, is Scott from Bonehead Guitars.
Aloha. I'm
Daniel from Devil & Sons in the UK. And our guest today is someone I met through the UK kind of guitar show scene. His name's Jason, and he's from Maybury Guitars. Hi, Jason.
Hey.
Now, look, one thing that I definitely want to talk about, Jason, as we go along today, is I think I met you, it was just after lockdown, so 4 or 5 years ago, and you were talking about where your business was at and how you wanted to grow it. And since then, I've seen you at so many guitar shows. I've seen your guitars mentioned in loads of magazines. So definitely want to talk about how you have grown your business, all that's involved in that, just training ahead for people so we know what's coming up. Definitely want to talk about that kind of graft of running a business as well as making the guitars. Also about the UK guitar scene. We were just talking off air about how different it is in the UK to lots of other countries for guitar shows. There's just so many here. But I thought it might make sense, Jason, if we start off just finding out a bit about your guitars and the different models you make, because they're quite varied.
Sure.
And I appreciate a lot of people might not know your work. So what I'm going to do is I'll do a screen share of your website, and we can kind of go through the things.
Sure.
Is there a way you sort of kind of sum up when you meet people what your brand is or what your guitars are like?
They're traditional but different is how I would describe them. So when I first started making guitars 8 years ago, I used to make lots of weird and wacky shapes, and that wasn't what was really popular in the market. So I basically went with traditional shapes but put a twist on them. So at the moment you're looking at upscaler guitars. So these are guitars that are made from reclaimed parts and reclaimed timber, and these are sort of not the bottom. They're like sort of my base models. These go for around sort of £1,000 to £1,500. They're all of the bodies and everything are completely handmade, but the necks are reclaimed from other instruments, then stripped and all the fretwork redone, etc. So these are sort of the entry level, and these are actually my most popular models. People like the sort of relic but not relict chalk paint finishes, and the Sugar Barn dyed finishes are really popular.
For people that are listening on the audio, because obviously we put this out as audio as well, I'll put links to Jason's website and Instagram below so you can see them. But yeah, one of the things I've really noticed about these is the kind of bright colours of them. But there is quite a range, so I presume you do some that aren't necessarily so vivid as well in the upscale.
With these ones, they're really sort of bright colours. That's my thing with these. So it's wood that's been distressed, painted, and then the paint is distressed as well. I don't know if you go back, there might be some Shugiban dyed ones. Well, you can see there's one that's just sort of burnt wood next to the blue one. So that one there, that's a Shugiban finish. And Shugiban is is a Japanese weathering method that they've used for hundreds, if not thousands of years, where they torrefy the wood, soft woods, to harden them. So basically it's burnt, which caramelizes all of the sugars in the wood and produces a hard finish to a soft wood. And that's a natural finish on that one. And if you go back,
I saw a crazy video the other day of it was a Japanese construction site, and they had long strips of wood that they put together in like triangle cross section, and they were burning up the inside.
That's it. That's exactly
on site before they use it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
They used to do it in tubes as well. So they put a stack of wood into tubes and then have that tube above the fire, and the flames would go up the tube almost like a chimney sort of thing. Now, if you scroll up, there's the one with the pink pick guard. So that's a Shushugiban finish, but also with a dye on it. So I do have these. So it's a torrefied finish, but then with a dye on it before the actual finish goes onto the guitar.
Fantastic. Just quickly do a shout. There's quite a few people in the chat. So hi, everyone. If you've got any questions, join in. That'd be brilliant. Jason, one thing I remember was I was at a show where you were talking to a client or a potential client, and you were in front of your display with all the guitars, and you had a really good, precise way of describing, as you just have, the kind of way your guitars are made. So you could sort of say, this range costs this amount because this is how long it takes me, and this is how I do it. And this range costs this amount because of this and this. So it was very much, this is how it works. So a customer knows what's getting. Yes,
I'm very open. I mean, so the parts are what they cost, and then it's my time, and that's it. So, you know, if I'm doing a custom build for somebody, they get an itemized list of what all of the parts are. I don't make any markup on those parts. That's what they cost, and then my time is the bit that I make money on, and I think people appreciate that. You know, quite a lot of the time people will just give a random number without any sort of basis as to why that figure is that. You know, I've built guitars that have had 1,500, 1,600 pounds worth of parts in. You know, so, but to a layman just picking that up in a shop or whatever, they wouldn't understand that, you know, a Honduran cedar body is 200 pounds. The, you know, flamed or quilted maple top is another 120. You know, all of the components add up to what you get at the end of it. And these upscaler ones, you know, the parts there, you know, maybe 200, 250 pounds in parts, and then the rest of it is time in putting them all together. Yeah.
No, that's one thing that I do remember that I assume the customer talking to really appreciated, which is sometimes when I've been at a show, people just say, like, how long does that take, or how much does that cost? And they don't really understand, because you're at a show where there's potentially lots of other stands that are shops just selling off the shelf products, and often at a discount, like they're selling them off. So to be able to explain, this is how much that would cost and this is how long it takes, is, I think, a real insight into the process as well.
Sure. So we've now gone into the fishhook tees. So this is my take on a Telecaster, basically. They are, the ones we're looking at here are all sort of higher end than the upscalers. That purple and pink burst one that we're looking at here, that is all premium exotic wood. So it's obviously a quilted maple top. That's a 10 millimeter slab on the top of that. So it's not, you know, a veneer. It's you know, thick. So I think that one's a Marenti body. It's got a Zebrano neck. And I think it's a Mun ebony fretboard on that one, from what I remember. Yeah, so it's a Marenti body. That will be chambered as well, so it will be a semi-hollow chamber in that to reduce the weight of the Marenti.
You were saying off air, because when I was looking at that, it reminded me, Scott recently had a guitar that was the kind of pink and purple finish, but Scott often talks about how the choice of wood might lend you to how you make the guitar and how you finish. And you were saying off air, sometimes your wood comes in and it's such a nice piece, it's one you're making for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So, for instance, that the semi-hollow, the thin line there, it's actually on the wall behind me. I don't know if you can see it, but that was actually the top of that was from a chopping block that I found in a flea market that I then split and was able to make a book match top out of it. But I find stuff like that, and just randomly going around a flea market, and I saw this old ash chopping block with an amazing figure in it, and I just bought it, and that then became that guitar's top. But I knew when I bought that was going to be a guitar that was staying here, just because of the figuring in that piece. And
is that partly how you found your upscaler guitar woods then? Just flea markets and things like that?
Yeah, flea markets, eBay. The spruce is all I used to do dumpster diving. And if I saw somebody who was having their house renovated and there was some timber, I'd knock on the door and ask if I could take the timber. And if I see something like that, I still do that. But I've actually got a local charity near me in Woking, and they go round to building sites and will take all of the waste material from building sites, and then they have classes that they do for young people to teach them how to do carpentry. But they also sell off the timber. So, wood that hasn't been used in the build, so like floor joists and roof timbers, that's what most of those upscalers are made from now, is from reclaimed stuff from building sites that hasn't been used, or it's an off-cut that can't be used because it's too short.
Sounds like a great charity.
Yeah, they really are a good charity. I mean, it's great. You go in there and they run all sorts of classes, and sometimes when I go in, you can hear them doing the class, and they're talking about the safety of wearing a mask, because that's even more important than being careful with your hands, because you can live without a finger, but if you damage your lungs from all of the sawdust, that can actually kill you. So it's hidden dangers and that sort of thing. It was a really, really interesting place.
There's a few people in the chat. Curtis from Goth Rider Creations says he's seen you at a few shows before. And Simon, who's a UK builder, saying you're a man after his heart, I guess, with the reclaiming of the wood and the love of the wood there. Hey, Jason, is there another particular model that you think I should show off now before we talk a bit more about your history in the building?
Yeah, I mean, the Chola is my take on an offset. So this was actually the one in the middle there, the Cherry Burst, was one that I built for Guitarist magazine about probably 2 years ago now. 23. So this was one that was that they contacted me, were interested in a guitar. They sort of specified that they wanted something different, but with a kind of vintage vibe to it. And they wanted the mahogany body and the quilted, the flame top, etc. And they also wanted this sort of Les Paul-esque control thing on it. I usually do one tone, one volume on mine, but they specified that they actually wanted the 4 controls, so that's what they got. So that's
a cool experience of commissioning you, essentially, and working through that process.
Yes, very, very much so. I mean, one of the things that I do is, you're able to choose all of the woods, so you get a selection of tops that you can choose from, bodies, necks, etc., and then you can go from there.
It might be jumping around a bit, but that kind of coverage that you got from the magazine, was that actually helpful for your brand and your business?
I think it adds validity to your brand if you're able to get into a magazine. I mean, I don't know if I got any direct sales off of it. Certainly not off of that one. However, when I got so one of the upscalers went into them October 24, I think it was, and that then actually subsequently made the review editor's choice of gear of the year, and I did get sales off of the back of that. You know, direct sales where people had said to me, saw this in the magazine and I'd really be interested. And I think I ended up making, you know, about 10 back to back, all exactly the same color as the one that was in the magazine. And, you know, I was fed up with them at the end of it, but, you know, it was great to have that level of business come in a short period of time.
Yeah, incredible.
So yes, but it was that specifically getting into the gear of the year that was the one where it was noticeable that there was an uplift in sales.
Yeah, I wonder, because obviously gear of the year is an acknowledgement of the quality of what's being made as well. But
yes.
It also seems to come at a time when people are thinking about spending and buying. I know when I'm watching things on YouTube, like the top pedals of a year, it's always at the time where I'm thinking, oh, I should invest, or maybe it's the way it's set up, like this is what I should be buying or treating myself to. But so just want to stick to that kind of publicity thing, because I've also seen your guitars feature in videos on YouTube, like the I'm the Blues guy. I forgot his name. I always forget his name.
Shame.
Yeah, Shane.
I had to think about that myself there. Yeah. So again, this is a thing that a lot of people that are coming into building guitars don't really grasp. Lots of people make guitars, but it's not about that. It's not only about that. It's also about building a brand and investment. And I dread to think the tens of thousands of pounds that I've put back into marketing, and you know, one of those things is using YouTube influencers. But you know, I sent 2 guitars out to Australia. I mean, just the postage on that was 350 quid each guitar, and I sent 2 over to Shane, and you know, again, off of the back of that, because he is a very prominent YouTuber, I did get direct sales off of the back of him having the guitars. So the first one I sent over, because again, he's left-handed player, so they're left-handed guitars that get sent to him. So the first one was one that I had, and I had a left-handed one. I had it in stock, and we were chatting, and I sent that over to him for him to take a look at. But the second one, again, was actually very, very similar to the guitar that was in the Guitarist Gear of the Year. It was one that sort of went viral, and he had the same color, same pick guard, but he had a custom set of Sunbear pickups put into it. So, and again, that's something I do. If I'm making an upscaler, it doesn't have to be all secondhand in used parts. People can pick and choose. If you want brand new tuners, brand new pickups, you know, it can all be mix and match. So that's what he had, and you know, it's one of the guitars that he goes and gigs with. It was one that's been in his, again, he did a Gear of the Year, and it was in you know, his sort of top 10 lineup in that as well. So yeah, but again, it's an investment. You know, YouTubers are expensive as well. You know, if you are spending money on somebody that's an influencer, I think sort of minimum spend is like £300, and unless you're, you know, friends with them or, you know, whatever. But you know,
is that sorry? Obviously, that's the minimum fee you're paying them. Obviously, you also had the cost of sending it, but then are they keeping the guitar as well?
No, well, yeah, that's a difficult one. The ones I sent over to Australia, I had no intention on those coming back. So yeah, no, that they were guitars that went over. But if you're sending one for a demo, if it's someone with hundreds of thousands of followers, you are going to expect to pay a fee. However, if I'm paying a fee, I'm not paying to give them a guitar.
Yeah.
The guitar comes back.
Because I've had the issue where I've had people ask me to send them for demos to America, and then I've got the issue of posting it there. Then I feel I should cover the tax they pay when they import tax. And then if I'm sending it back, I've got to do that all the way back. And same with Europe now. I've had to send a few guitars back and forward to Europe. And the cost on the tax each way, because it doesn't matter how hard I try, a lot of the couriers I use seem to get confused and charge you duties and withhold your guitar even when you're not meant to pay the duties. But then saying that, I just sent one to America. The guitar was £1,000, or it was more than that, but I sold it in a sale, so it was £1,000, and it got there without paying any tax, but it should have been taxed. So I don't really know what's happening. It's couriers' bad paperwork, I think it's like
$750. That if it's over $750, you pay 4%, and then it goes up in increments, I believe. That if you're sending to the US, so I think
there seem to be local charges as well. But then to Europe, anything you send to Europe is 20% flat.
Yes.
So that's a bit hard sending it backwards and forwards. There you go. Because it
doesn't seem worth it, Daniel. 20%.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, well, if I'm selling a guitar to someone in Europe, I make it very clear that is their additional cost on it. But we had one recently that got damaged in transit, so I had to ship it back to fix it because I didn't want someone there to fix it. It wasn't a massive fix; it was quite easy. And then I had to ship it back to him. Now, technically, we don't have to pay tax 3 times to send it there, send it back, and send it there again. But it was really complicated dealing with the courier to prove. I had to have a whole chain of paperwork, even though it was all through the same courier, to show it was going backwards and forwards. But yeah, sorry, Jason, I've gone off on a tangent.
It's all right, no problem. I mean, I've had the same thing where I've had to have stuff come back from the States and them trying to charge me 20% for it coming into the country. I'm like, but you do have to have the paperwork. So in that instance, I had to have the paper trail of it going over and then of it coming back, and I managed to sort it out, but it took about 3 or 4 days to sort out with the courier.
I had a massive panic this week because last week sent a guitar to America. I saw that it had arrived in New York to be sorted. I saw it had cleared New York customs on the tracking, and then suddenly it said destination country Jamaica. I was like, what's going on here? Turns out there's a place in New York called Jamaica. But I had a panic because it did say destination country Jamaica. But that was one as well that just slipped. That's the one that slipped through paying tax for some reason.
I've always been terrified to ship a guitar, and this has just made it all that much worse.
And so just a quick note for Jason and Daniel, when you are selling these guitars across borders, are you using some kind of service, or are you just one-to-one talking to the customer and dealing that way? And I ask because I use Shopify for my store, and I've sold physical goods all across Europe, and I never have to worry about anything. They handle the duties. I don't even understand it, but I don't think about it. Like, they handle that for me. Mm-hmm. So again, the question is, do you just do a one-on-one with the customer, or do you use some kind of intermediary service?
I do one-on-one with customers. So most of my business comes through Instagram and my website. And people contact me, and if it's a commission, then it's definitely one-on-one. If someone buys something through a website, sometimes I don't even speak to them. It's just a case of they've paid and it gets shipped off. But if it's a commission, then it is very much one-on-one. I don't use Shopify or even Reverb. The charges on that are hideous. I think it's about 10% you have to pay just to use Reverb, because they make you use their own credit card system and everything else. And so that's one that I tried, didn't like the massive hit I took on it, because I don't make masses of money off of making guitars. It's you're never going to get rich making guitars, are you? So it's definitely whatever I'm making, I don't want to be giving it to someone just for having a picture on their website. So
I definitely want to come back to getting rich making guitars in a minute. Yeah, no. So I when I first started selling regularly, I did it through Reverb, eBay, and Etsy, and I think I sold. And my website, and I sold equally through all of them. But then as I started getting commissions in, most of it was direct, right? Not through those sites. But a lot of people found me through Reverb. They'd see my guitar on Reverb, and because of the sort of guitars I make, they're like, I like that kind of thing, but I'd rather it looked a bit more like this or that, and they'd contact me directly. So I found like listing things on Reverb and eBay was a bit like advertising, putting adverts out for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to have this weird spreadsheet where I knew how much I wanted to sell a guitar for. That's how much it was on my website. And then I'd work out how much fees everyone else took. And then you'd have a guitar that was sold on 4 different sites at 4 different prices, which did my head in. So I just started doing it all at one price, which was the higher price, and take a cut, because Reverb do take a big cut. And everywhere seems to take a cut. Even YouTube take a cut if people give you a tip or something on YouTube. See, there's no way around that. But doesn't matter where I sell it through. Unlike Shopify, I have to deal with the postage. So I have to say on Reverb, I have to say on Etsy, I have to say on eBay what my shipping costs are. And shipping costs vary so much throughout the year for the same people. I go through the same service, but like a bass and a guitar might weigh slightly different. The next guitar might be a bit lighter. The next one might be in a bigger case. And the shipping costs range quite a bit. So I always have to bump the shipping up on Reverb and things like that, because I don't know until I pack it up how much it's going to cost. Whereas if I'm doing one-to-one, I can say to someone, this is how much the guitar is, and I'll charge you what the shipping costs. And I'll tell you what the shipping is. It'll be roughly this. And then I can tell them. And yeah, I think adding the shipping cost does put people off, because shipping a guitar to America at the moment costs me anything between £95 and £125. So when you're buying an instrument, it's got £125 shipping on, that can put you off a bit, I think.
So I'm assuming you're not insuring that then?
No, I am insuring it because I pay an insurance company for a yearly marine policy, which covers all my shipping to anywhere in the world. And that way I don't have to insure independently through each guitar that I send. And that is ridiculously costs a lot, but it's so much better, I found, because when something has been damaged in transit, dealing with an insurance company as opposed to dealing with the courier has been much easier and much more straightforward. And also, I don't really trust a lot of the insurance on the shipping for the couriers I use, because they have lots of caveats, and I feel like sometimes sending an instrument is early on anyway, some companies wouldn't let you send instruments because they were obviously got damaged regularly or something, or are costly to fix.
Hey Daniel, I just bought a guitar yesterday from New Zealand for research purposes, and I paid for shipping $43 to get it shipped from New Zealand here to Texas. And I thought that was a steal. I thought that was a great deal. So I don't know what's going on with shipping. I have no clue, but like I guess it differs depending on the weight, the size.
Also, if you're a company that sends lots of parcels, it overall reduces the cost because you can have a deal with someone. Like I found a few really good shippers, but I just don't make enough to justify paying them a big fee to keep all the individual costs down. Jason, a minute ago we were talking about brand and this idea of building your brand through the magazines and the YouTube channels, etc. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned off air how, I'll see if I can find the picture to share, how one thing I like about your guitar, when I see you at guitar shows, is your stand feels like your stand that moves around shows. It's not just you booked a trestle table and put a cloth on it. I wonder if you just talk a bit more about what your vision for the brand was originally, if it's changed, how you've helped create that, if you don't mind
Yeah, no, I can. I'm not sure it's going to be that interesting. I mean, I'm sure it's the same as most people that I started off just making one guitar. People saw it, and then I made more, and then it's never really stopped. I think it was after Guitar 5 that I decided, okay, this is probably going to be something I'm going to be doing for a while, and so came up with a logo. I wanted something that was kind of very sort of 50s and traditional, which is where the sort of Maybury Guitars logo. Maybury as a name, that's the town I live in, which is where Maybury came from. My last name is Snelling, so it wasn't particularly great for guitars, so I had to come up with something else, which is where the Maybury came from. And I've gone for that very sort of traditional, with the stand, the brickwork, the Oriental worn rug, wooden speaker cabinets, and it's got that kind of very traditional vibe to it, which is what I even with the instruments, that's what I'm kind of going for.
Yeah, no, I think I think you said to me once that you have to go to every guitar show because otherwise people will notice you're not there. If that makes sense.
Yeah, not every guitar show. I don't do every guitar show. So I think Birmingham is the big one, which is coming up on the 1st and 2nd of March. So that's the biggest one in the UK, and it's also the most expensive. It is comparatively 10, 12 times more expensive than any other show I do, and I do feel that's
2 days, isn't it?
It's 2 days, yeah. But also you've then got the travel, the hotel. It racks up very quickly, and I do feel if you're not there, if you've been going to a show regularly and then you're not there, people are going to notice that you're not there rather than notice that you are there. If that makes sense, your absence would be, certainly for me. I like to think that the brand is a known brand now. So I think Birmingham, I have to be at. And it's the same with every one of these guitar shows. You don't go in it thinking you're going to sell guitars. You go in it because you want to have that market presence. And hopefully off of the back of it, you'll get some people contact you that want to do commission builds. And that's where the sale piece comes in, rather than selling stuff directly on the day.
Yeah, no, and I feel that kind of whole aesthetic of having the stand that goes with the guitars helps with that presence being identifiable when you're looking down a row of guitars of displays and seeing that out there. But that all makes sense because I have not been to many guitar shows, but I've been to a number of times, and then a few just once. And you do meet the same people at the shows, and I do wonder if that meeting them and the conversations I have with them, if in the long run they're in the back of your mind for when they might want an instrument, things like that. But also it just feels like that they might tell other people. If they're having a conversation with you, they might bump into someone else, say, "Oh, go and check this stand out," or I met Jason or Daniel, and great guy, I love the way they build because I've had this conversation with them about the process. So I think it's important, that kind of connection. But I've always wondered, for me, the cost of going to those shows, because as you say, it builds up with the transport, potentially staying over, eating, whether I should just pump all of that into, like you do as well, the paying a YouTuber to do a review or paying for adverts online.
It's a difficult one. I think you've got to do it all myself. You've got to have a traditional. Oh, sorry, a message just come out.
Oh, I just keep sharing. Someone's just saying they like it when people come to a show and see you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think also people buy from people. Certainly when you're building a custom instrument for someone, I've had one chap that I've been talking to for 5 years. I see him at pretty much all of the shows, and we're now talking about building a guitar. So it was,
amazing.
Previously he was, just really nice chap chatting away at the guitar shows, and over that period of time, it's obviously got to a stage where he's comfortable enough that, I'm going to come back to this, comfortable enough that I'm a business that isn't going to disappear tomorrow, and that he can invest in an instrument. He's going to get what he wants, and there's going to be the backup network that if anything goes wrong, he can bring the guitar back, and so he's comfortable in making that investment. And coming back to that, I think that's what a lot of new builders don't get. You can build the most amazing instrument in the world. You're probably not even going to sell it for what your parts cost, because the public do not want to invest in a brand that they don't know, or a brand that isn't established. And I would say it probably took me about 5 years to break that, break out of that mold and be a brand that's recognized. And that only comes from just being everywhere that you can. And I don't have hundreds of thousands of pounds budget to do this stuff. So, it's just something you have to slowly chip away at and build that brand awareness. We've talked about this before, but don't think that you're going to go into building guitars and you're going to become a millionaire from building guitars. That's, it's not that at all. This is started out as a hobby and has turned into a full-time job, but it's much more enjoyable than my 9 to 5 was, but it doesn't make me anywhere near the same sort of money that I used to make as an IT director. So, this is a lifestyle choice. It's not a financial choice.
I have a vague memory that when I first met you, you were talking about maybe an aspiration of having your company big enough that you might have a few people working with you.
I still very much think that, and that's not the end goal. I mean, world domination is the end goal. But no, I would love to have a couple of younger guys working with me. I've looked at expanding and getting premises and all of that, and actually, it financially just doesn't make sense. You've got to be at such a high throughput of instruments for you to be able to do that and justify the cost. I mean, I don't know what it's like in the States, but over here, as soon as you start taking premises, you then have to pay more money to the government, and it just doesn't make sense. I would literally be making guitars to pay the rent on a premises and salaries, and that's not where I'm at. I mean, my end game is I've got 2 boys, and once they're through university, sell up in the southeast and then buy somewhere in the Lake District or Dorset or somewhere that has outbuildings that I can then grow the business. And hopefully in the next couple of years, that will be where I'm able to take the business. And as soon as I'm in that place, then yes, sort of as far as I'm concerned, the skies are the limit. If I get the orders in, then I'll be able to make the instruments.
I'm sure some people's ears tweaked when they heard Dorset, because there's a lot of people here that have come into guitar building through Crimson and their YouTube channel, and they're based that way. Look, just a quick question that came up, which you did mention. Mick from Mick's Guitars just asked, do you ever use CNCing, or is it all?
No, I don't. Again, I've looked into it. That's a lie. I don't use CNC, but I have had some fretboards that have had custom inlays done, and they are done via CNC. But maybe 4 in the last 8 years that I've had done that way, and it's something that the customer has specifically asked for, and they know I'm not sitting there with bits of abalone shell and a handsaw cutting stuff out and then using a Dremel to route out the fretboard. That's not. I don't have the time or patience for that. I
just wanted to talk a bit more about shows though. Scott and Mark, can you remind us, because I know we've talked about it before, but are there just not shows really that happen for guitar exhibiting apart from the big ones in America? Or is it just that there are, but America's so big you don't really go between them all?
I know within the last year, I know they've had a show in Dallas. I suspect there are more than that, and most of the time I'm just not aware of it. But yeah, at least for me, most of the shows that would be anywhere would be a long ways away. They'd be a trip.
Mm.
And I don't really. I've never quite been in a situation where I've got a collection enough that I could actually, have a booth and show stuff. So I'd love to go to one though. I still haven't been to a single guitar show, and I think it'd be awesome. It'd be great to go to NAMM, but that really would be a trip. That'd be a whole year vacation.
Yeah, I know that one of the things I like about shows is chatting to other builders. It's almost like having the stand is holding you back from chatting to people sometimes. Mm. That's a whole other thing.
Well, yeah, and thinking about going to a show, I couldn't help but think about that, be free to just run around and look at stuff. Yeah, but then you'd spend a lot of time playing and making an ass of yourself. So. Or at least I would. So.
Yeah, you're right, Daniel. We don't have very many. But there was one that came through. It's a show that runs in Nashville, and then it goes to LA, and then it comes to Texas, kind of a small town somewhere in central Texas. But the footage and the photos that I'd seen of this guitar show, it looked like the ratio was really kind of trending towards just resellers, especially like a lot of very expensive vintage gear. So very, very expensive acoustics and electrics that are all vintage. And I didn't see really any like boutique or like custom builds. It's just like old Gibsons, old Martins, old Fenders. So a lot of resellers from what I've seen. But, that's the same place you bump into like Eric Johnson, one of these shows. I've never been either. Like I just, it's kind of strange because it would be such a long drive. And I could probably literally like walk all those booths in like 30 minutes. And it's not really worth it to just even go see one of those shows, especially if every guitar is like, $10,000,
Yeah. There's a channel that became a member of my channel. So I found them through that, called Every Guitar Tells a Story. And they've just got on YouTube a series of quite short videos at a guitar show where they were interviewing boutique builders. So there clearly are in America some shows that it felt very much like the experience I've had exhibiting at and being at a British one. So we're just talking to the builders about their builds, how they build it and things. So that seemed to exist, but that must be much harder for a builder to travel around the country doing that, because that'd be a full-time job, traveling around America, I would imagine, trying to exhibit. I have to find someone that does it. I don't think anyone in our chat has done that over in America.
I was just going to say, do you not think that a lot of the guitar shows in this country are very similar, in that it's all second-hand Gibsons and Fenders and, very much a, sort of flea market feel. And, you get, there are some, the Birmingham one, for example, Brighton, Bristol, that are what I would consider sort of really, really good. And then you've got others, certainly the smaller ones, that are much more geared towards people that have got a guitar shop and they're looking at moving their stock on through the show, as opposed to it being boutique. I think that's what a lot of the guitar shows are like over here. And then the last couple of years, these much smaller boutique shows have been doing the rounds, which, I've done a few of. And I definitely think that if you're someone building custom boutique guitars, having a custom boutique event with other people that are doing the same stuff is much better than doing a general guitar show where you're in amongst the big bigger brands, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I met you at the British Boutique Guitar Festival.
That's right.
Which happened for a couple of years, run by Lewis from LT Custom Guitars,
Yep.
and Mike from China Guitar Skeptic, who was a great guy. If you don't know his channel, go and look it up. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago, but absolutely brilliant, really supportive of builders. And I found that sort of experience of me going to that show made a connection between a few other boutique builders that seems to have then expanded out, and it does feel like there's a network. And I know you're definitely more involved with that than me. I'm on a WhatsApp group, that's about it. But maybe you could tell us a bit about the guitar show that you're helping organize that's coming up, because that seems to have that ethos you were just talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we the pair of us are part of something called the Boutique Guitar Collective, which is a group of builders that I think did come off of the back of that British Guitar Festival, and one of the things that we're doing in March is on the 15th of March in Woking. We're doing a boutique event. It's about 24 vendors that are going to be there, and it's with the local performing arts charity Fiery Bird, and they do classes and open mics and concerts and things in their music venue that they have there, and they've also got a large space for exhibiting in, and we're going to be using that, and then the proceeds from that, so it's like £2 on the door, that will be going back into the charity. So it's very much a collaboration with that performing arts charity Fiery Bird. So fingers crossed, it's the first one in Woking, and first one that we're doing. The early signs are it's going to be really positive and really big. I mean, the venue is a 5-minute walk from Woking Station. There's ample parking in Woking, and they've also got parking on site for, I think, a smaller number of cars, but there is parking there, and then within a 2 or 3 minute walk, you've got all of Woking's main multi-story car parks and everything. So it's a good spot just off of the high street, and we're hoping to have a lot of people through there that are interested in the boutique market, as opposed to just coming. You can still come and just look at guitars, but you're not coming to buy a used Gibson or Fender.
Yeah. I hope that goes well. I mean, it sounds like it will. It should do. I think that's got the audience that when I've seen you at the other shows, where it has been, I would say 70% people reselling or shops having their kind of clear out is what it feels like. That's where I saw you explain to someone the cost of the building of a custom guitar, a boutique guitar, because it is quite hard if you're just a lay person, don't know much about the smaller brands or even that they exist, to come in and see a Gibson being sold cheaper maybe next to a boutique guitar and wonder why there's such a price difference. Whereas with a boutique guitar, you've got that audience going there who know what that means and what it's about, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're coming to a boutique show, you're coming to look at custom-made instruments, and the fact that it is handmade and it's taken 2 or 3 months to produce an instrument for you. That's the point. It's not something that's been churned out in a day on a Chinese or Korean factory plant. I still don't understand how we can or not we, but as a country, we have people reselling guitars at £150.
Yeah.
That wouldn't even scratch buying a set of pickups for one of mine, let alone the entire guitar spray job and everything. But those guitars are available, and I guess there's a market for those, but also I think there's a market for somebody that does want something that's handcrafted and has hands on it all the way through the process. The fact that I'm still here means that there is a market for that.
Yeah.
I always liked Ty from Shot the Fox. pointed out one time that you're not just paying for this guitar, you're paying for all of the experience and practice and all the things that led you to the point where you can make this guitar.
Yeah.
It kind of put some things in perspective for me, because I've always kind of struggled with, what should this be? What is this guitar worth? So, but we've talked a lot about the fact that most guitar players don't really know that much about their actual instrument. So we've also touched on the manufacturer situation where, people, I guess it's the same mentality as people buying a car. They want to know that, Ford is going to be there forever, or not realizing, well, the guitar, a guitar is a guitar. Anybody who knows how to work on a guitar is going to be able to work on this if something does go wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
But people really, they've always had that mentality of worrying about, is this seller going to be here forever? Anyway.
And the other thing also that goes along with the experience of it all is the experience of the buyer. So as Jason was saying, that kind of one-to-one connection that you have with someone when you're making something for them. That's one of the things I like the most about commissions, is the working with someone to help them create something they can't create, but they've got in their head roughly what it is, and you help tease it out and sort it out and give them examples and demo drawings along the way to get to the thing that is their end product, their kind of dream product.
Yeah, and this was weird. This for me was weird anyway. When I got into making guitars, and you're making them for people, I'm putting my heart and soul into that instrument, and I'm building a relationship with the customer, which is almost, and in some cases is a friendship that you've built. And certainly when I first started doing it, you send the guitar to that person, and then that just stops.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? So you've spent 3 months going backwards and forwards, and you know what they're having for dinner or whatever, and then all of a sudden that with most customers, as you'd expect, that then finishes, and you don't. I used to miss the customer because the customer is no longer there at the end of an email or whatever, because they've received their instrument. But then, over the years, there are people that are repeat customers and that I still chat to on Instagram and stuff. But certainly when I first started making it, it was a weird experience of, you've built this relationship, and it's actually quite close because you're talking almost daily, you're sending pictures, etc. And then once it's done, that's it. The relationship's over, which almost like speed dating or something.
Yeah. I built a guitar for someone that I still offer this, but I ask people to pay a certain percentage up front before I build for them. But I will offer it in interest-free installments. So it took them 3 years to get to the point where they paid the 75% up front because they didn't have much money. But over those 3 years, every now and then another 50 quid would appear in my account, or 150, and then there'd be regular, like we'd go a month without chatting, and then there'd be 3 weeks where every day he's sending me more images of ideas he's got. The guitar was totally different after 3 years when I started building to what we started out at. But it was that really interesting conversation. And I was thinking about him the other day because I found some pictures of the guitar, and I haven't heard from him for at least a year. But he did stay in touch afterwards because he liked the guitar and wanted to send photos of it being played and stuff, which was nice. Can I just share something else, Jason? Because this is something I find interesting. The collaboration element that you also have on your guitars. The fact that, so we've got here a couple of different artists that have I think you must have either sent them the guitar for them to work on, or they've made something that you've then stuck onto.
Yeah, so there's a mix of mix there. So the one that's like really shiny is a resin top over a piece of artwork that I made the body, routed it, put the binding on, and then they did the artwork and poured the resin. There's another one that is a tabletop that got sent to me that was then spliced into a so that there you go. So that was a tabletop, and that's the bits of spruce, reclaimed spruce that I used for the body blank. So yeah, so it's a mixture. Sometimes I get sent a piece of wood with a painting on. Other times I'll send a body to someone and they'll paint it and send it back to me.
And is that the person that's commissioning it has said, I would like the thing I've made on the guitar?
No, those I was working, well, as were you, with Euphoria Gallery in Soho. Yeah. So a lot of those instruments went to them. This one here is Christopher Williams, who's a New York artist that's now based in Sweden. And he sent me, so that's not my body, but I've finished it and I have, but in fact I can show you if you bear with me.
Yeah, Euphoria Gallery, we'll get onto that in a minute.
So this one here is that body. So they sent me the body over, and then I lacquer finished it. I put the neck on, sourced the hardware, pickups, and built a guitar for them. But that's actually their guitar. The artist is keeping that one. So and I've done quite a lot of work with Christopher over in Sweden. Eddie Rifkind over in the States. I did a really amazing sort of Firebird-esque guitar with him, and I work with lots of different people. But to be fair, most people keep the guitar themselves afterwards. So that's the commission, is that they want to have a guitar made for them.
No, I like that idea, because I like the idea of the body of a guitar potentially being a canvas. I know Mark makes lots of videos where he's experimenting with different ways of finishing it and putting things on it that make it very much like an artwork. So I love the idea of actually working with an artist to take their skills and what they make and combine it with your skills and what you make to create something that is a piece of both of you.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you can see I use a lot of reclaimed stuff. That gives me a joy and a sense of purpose that something that was going to be thrown away or burnt or whatever is now a guitar, and hopefully it'll be here in 100 years' time. After I've gone, the guitar, or at least some of them, will still exist, I hope. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an obvious thought that I've never thought about the guitars I make in the future. When I'm gone, will people still be using them? I've got this thing where the thing I find really odd, back to what you're saying, Jason, about working with someone, is any guitar I build, I put a lot of focus and energy into it. It's like the main thing I'm doing. Sometimes it's in your dreams. You wake up and you've been dreaming about not as mundane as the day you've spent sanding, but some of the elements of it, and then it's gone, and it's not like I've forgotten about it. It's just not in my life anymore. Because I spent the last few days looking back through photos of old guitars of mine and sort of reminiscing a bit on certain builds and how I made them and how I might do it differently again and what I enjoyed about it, and it kind of evokes these memories that have, like you described, a past relationship, something that's not there anymore. But I guess once I've sent them off, I kind of shut off from it. But yeah, it would be interesting to go back and try and hunt down some of those guitars, and because I'm still in contact with a few of the people that bought them, see how they're using them.
Yeah, and that's another odd thing. I don't know if you've had it or not yet, but where you've built a guitar for someone, and then 2 or 3 years down the road, they sell it, and you see it being sold, and you then don't know where it's gone. And that's a bit weird as well.
I had someone contact me saying, I've seen this for sale, can I just check, was it one you actually built? And it was, and I knew who I built it for, and I personalized it for them. It had a painting on the back of them and their family.
Wow.
It felt heartbreaking knowing they were selling it. But I also know that they were in quite a tough situation at the time. So they probably needed to sell it on. So I felt really sad about that. And then the worst one is a guitar I built for someone as a gift. So a well-known musician as a gift. And then he recently raffled it off. And I felt really in two minds about that. Because again, I know he's probably not in the best financial situation because he's selling off so much of his stuff. So that's sort of fair enough. And I know it's going to a fan who's going to love it and use it. But at the same time, when I built it for him, I asked his permission to make copies of it to sell because I had a few other people that wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, no, I'd rather this was a one-off thing just for me, which I respect him for. But now it's out there with other people. So it sort of feels a bit weird. Like now it's not in his hands. Can I make copies of it? Is that all right? Or can I make copies
I think
of
so.
it? Yeah.
You know, you can't complain now, can you?
Could be worse. I built one. This was years ago for somebody who wanted one and did an inlay of his company logo. And like last year, I got contacted by somebody out of the blue asking, "Did you make this guitar?" He got it at a pawn shop for $100 and thought maybe it was going to be worth a whole lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a gut punch. That one kind of hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
It
Again, it comes back to that. If it's not a Gibson or Fender, you know, the perceived value isn't there, is it?
Yeah. I mean, even if it was a Gibson or Fender, I wouldn't. I imagine people buy their dream Gibson, but they might sell it in the future. So it's sort of fair enough that things get sold on. But when it's got that personalised element to it, it feels weird.
I was just going to say, but not for $100.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the
Pawn shop.
Yeah.
But
you don't know what the guy's luck was like, do you?
Yeah.
I mean, as you say, if someone's hit hard times or whatever,
Obviously, the pawn shop owners don't watch this stream. So they don't know how famous you are and how much your guitar.
That's hilarious. Yeah. I haven't spent a lot of time looking at guitars in pawn shops, but usually what is there is absolute garbage. But obviously, they tend to not have a clue about what they have anyway. So if they got some, off-brand Bonehead, what the hell is this? They're probably going to just think that it's, not worth all that much. They know they can sell Gibsons and Fenders, and so I guess there's that.
I have got someone that's selling something I made for them. It was a mic stand, but it's really it's more like an artwork sculpture. But he's told me he's selling it on because he can't use it anymore for his stage shows, and he needs the money, and he's hoping it'll go to someone else that might use it. Could I help him sell it? And I kind of feel that's all right because he's come back to me to go through it all. But Menno just said in the chat. So Menno was on last week. Brilliant guy. He had a young girl message him on Instagram asking for the going price of his guitars, and he gave her the range, and then she confessed she was selling one that belonged to her ex.
I've had something similar to that. Not somebody's ex, but somebody that has bought one. They bought it, obviously, thought it was a steal, and were then looking at what they could then sell it on for.
Yeah.
But they didn't tell me that. They literally, it was as if they were commissioning a build. Specced out everything, and it was the spec of the guitar that I'd already made.
Yeah.
That's odd. I've also had one of the people that has had a very early one of my guitars, which I wasn't making any money on them at all, try and sell it back to me several years later for more than they bought it from me for.
Yeah.
Because my guitars are now going for much more than they bought it for. That was a bit odd.
Hey, Mark, I know that you maybe you still consider yourself a guitar collector, but I know you've mentioned in the past how you're very into collecting guitars. Do things stay in your collection if you buy them? Or presumably you're buying things that you want for a reason, but does that reason change and you might not want to keep it later?
These days, everything stays in the collection, but I did have a time where I was selling guitars, and I mentioned this before, I regret selling every single one. So I did used to have a very nice Gibson collection. I think I had like one of every model. And I sold them, and I regret those sales. So now everything stays in the collection, especially if it's like a Grail, piece. Then that goes straight into storage. Like I set it up, and then I never see it again. It's in my mind. It's in storage, and like that's it. So I'm like that kind of collector, right? I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, you got to play it. You got to play it." I collect it. It's mine. It's in storage, and that's why that's how I am now. But no, I don't sell anything. But I am at peak guitar now. I'm like you, Jason. Like I'm at peak guitar. I can't take any more intakes, and I got to get some of this stuff out. Like I'm trying really hard.
It reminds me of I used to work at the Tate Gallery. I still do occasionally, which is it's a national gallery in the UK. It looks after part of the British collection of artwork. So artwork that belongs to the country, and their policy is once an artwork comes into the collection, they will never sell it, whatever happens. Partly because you never know in the future because a lot of their art it just stays out of sight, storage. But you never know how things circle around, and these things might become important again, and that artist might be remembered by someone in the future and then become popular again. It has to come out. And also the ethos is if you sell something, you might not ever be able to get it back. So it's not, and Tate Gallery isn't a gallery that's got lots and lots of money, so they don't want to risk losing something that's potentially valuable.
Exactly. Like, oh, I bought this SG years and years ago from Gibson, and it was a time, I think early 2000s, when Gibson was doing what they called like a guitar of the week. So on their website, they would have a small batch run, very unique run of a guitar. And so I bought this SG that was unlike any other SG, right? And very unique. And again, small batch. They stopped making them, and I loved that thing. But then I sold it, and I can never ever get that exact model back. They just don't make them anymore, and it breaks my heart.
I mean,
I was going to say that's definitely, it's interesting because I've got a handful of other brand guitars. I think that's something when you're making them, I find it hard to justify buying other brands. And when I do, it's something that I want to get and keep. And sometimes I get trade-ins as well, and they usually are out the door pretty quickly. For me to keep a guitar now, it's got to be something that's special and that I want.
But I like the way you've also said that there's some of your guitars that you won't sell because of not just, I guess, the quality of the wood, but something about the way it's made or the process or when you made it that makes it special.
And also, I mean, as you guys will know, some guitars, when you make them, they just have mojo. There was a guitar that shouldn't be as good as it is that I made 3 years ago now, and it was a Harley Benton kit, Telecaster kit, and I was doing it for a competition that they had on where you bought their kit and then you'd send the pictures of it, and I built this thing, and the pickups were twice the amount that the kit cost, and it was, I made it into a Nashville Telly. It was metallic pink with a leopard skin pick guard on it. It was like really out there, and everyone that's picked it up has gone, wow, what is this? And my son, he's kept it, so he played it and was like, Dad, you can never get rid of this, and it's now one of his go-to guitars. And
amazing.
There's no reason it should be that good. I mean, even to the extent that it's like a 5-piece body, some African or Indonesian hardwood that's very lightweight. not an amazing maple neck, but I spent a lot of time on the neck. It's an oil finished, all the fretwork's been redone, so it plays beautifully. But it's just something when you plug it in. There's just something there, and yes, so even with my own guitars, there one of them I'll pick up, and it fits me.
I did the same thing. It might have been the same competition, and the Harley Benton kit I got. I don't know if it was the kit or what, but that guitar is absolute garbage. It's just absolute garbage, and it looks awesome. I really want to love it. It's not a good guitar. It's trash.
It's funny. Kits can be hit and miss, can't they?
Hey Daniel, maybe we should do an episode on Mojo, because Mojo is real, and I don't think any of us know where it comes from, and we can deep dive into every component of a guitar and truly kind of master, this and that. But where does Mojo come from? And we've touched on this before slightly. Like we talked about the Ghost in the Machine, or maybe love is the ingredient, right? When you're building the guitar, whatever it is, there's a mystery there. And it is absolutely just kind of cool to think about, and maybe even talk about, like dedicate a whole episode to Mojo.
Brilliant. I'll see if I can get Joe from Hello Sailor back on, because he talks about his Mojo components and his pedals all the time being important. Oh no, hold on. I've just found the guitar. Where has it gone? I just saw it. Sorry, there it is. Let's share it. Was it this one, Jason?
It was. That's it. That thing is insanely good.
You can't. Sometimes, I found this with pickups. I've got through most of them now. A pile of pickups from cheap guitar or cheap ones that I bought, kind of OEM. I don't know, China built pickups. Very hit and miss, but sometimes there's one that just sounds incredible. It's just like by fluke of how it's been badly wound, something's come out with it. And I would say I stripped a Fender Player 2 Series Strapped last year to refinish for someone, and it was 5 pieces. So I'm not saying that 5 pieces is necessarily bad, but yeah, that was a bit of a shock.
No, it's not. But I think
you don't expect.
You don't. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't make 5-piece guitars. I say that. I have done them where I've done laminated bodies with different woods across. So it was about 17 pieces. But that's whole
for a reason,
recycling thing. But typically it will be a 1-piece or a 2-piece body. The whole tone thing is a completely different subject. We probably don't want to get into. But
we're all right there. Thank you.
But I think that if you've got 2 identical guitars with different pickups, they are going to sound completely different. And also, if you have different amps, that's going to make the same guitar sound completely different. So there's so many elements that go into tone that wood is, if it is relevant, is a very small percentage of it. And I use lots of different woods. I use lots of native species, so oaks, ash, elm. Again, it's that whole sustainable thing that I like to use stuff that's local, on guitars. In fact, I'm making one at the moment that is the wood is all of it is oak. So it's a French white oak body that's flamed. So a flamed oak neck, and then the fretboard is bog oak. So really dark and hard. And at the moment, it's not got any pickups in, but it's 3.1 kilos. So what's that? Around 6.5 pounds. It's not heavy. So the whole oak is a heavy timber. It is, but if you get the right pieces, it's just as light as any other guitar.
There's just been discussion in the chat that we should have an episode all about tone wood. So I'll see if Paul Reed Smith's around. Maybe he can join us. Hey, look, we've got an hour and a quarter in. We've covered so many different things, but we didn't actually ever talk about how you first got into building. what was the initial, or even better than that, how did you first get into guitars? You mentioned your son, but was there anything prior to that?
No. So my son, he's 17 now. He's been playing guitar since he was 6. He started on classical guitar. And then when he was 8, he decided he didn't want to do that anymore and wanted to go into electrics. And we went to the local guitar store and we sat down with Strats and everything, and he just couldn't get on with it. He couldn't get his body around it because he was, small guy. He didn't want to go for a half size or a 3/4 size. He wanted a full scale length. And he didn't get on with anything in the shop. And we're leaving the shop, and he says to me, "Dad, can you not just make me a guitar?" And I went, "Oh, don't be silly. I can't make a guitar." And this went on of him asking, for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then I sat down, as most people do now, and started watching YouTube. And I probably watched 12, 14 hours worth of YouTube videos of making guitars. And then I made a guitar. So I've actually got it here. So this is the very first Maybury. And it's made out of a piece of oak worktop. We just had a kitchen fitted and had this piece of oak worktop left over. So that's what the body is made out of. The neck is an old Chinese guitar neck from something. I've got no idea what it is. Parts are not expensive at all. But the design was for him as an 8-year-old that had been playing classical guitar. So he's playing on the left leg and he needs to be able to get around it, and he wanted it to be full scale. So you actually, you play it on the left leg, and you're, with the size of the body, you've got no problem getting around it. And he played this for a few years before he grew big enough to move on to different shapes and things.
He would have been the coolest kid in school playing that, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. I mean, and it was made for a purpose. He's actually asked me to make him another one now, 8 years on, with the skill set and the materials and workshop and everything I've got. Can you not just make me another one and let's see what it's going to be like? And so I've got that as a project in the back of my head. I'm going to make another one for him that's the same but better. The upgraded version.
I love it. I love that you're the first person I think we've had on who has got into guitar building because someone's asked them to make them a guitar without any experience of building a guitar before. Did you have some sort of woodworking?
Yeah, so back in the day, I went to Ravensbourne Art College and was on track to actually go into sculpting or whatever, and I ended up getting into IT, as a lot of people did back then, and I didn't look back. It was just that I was paying the bills, but I'd always made tables and lamps, and I did stained glass for a period, so I always still had it as hobbies. And I guess that's where he got the idea. Can you not just make me one? Because he's always seen me making stuff, and I don't actually play. So, I can play a few chords, the pentatonic, do some bends and stuff, but it's enough to get the guitar set up. But, playing them is a different skill set to making them. I think the people that play them and then get into making them, that I would find must be, almost the same. It's a different skill set. You can play a guitar. That doesn't mean that you can operate routing machines and everything else that's involved in it. So I don't play in bands or anything like that, but my son does, and every now and again he gets a new guitar that I've made for him. Even to the extent now that he doesn't like playing any other guitars. He just says, "Dad, then they're just not as good as yours." So it's like, that's, I can't ask for more than that. He's probably a bit biased as well, but still, for me, that's how I got into it. And I made that one. I then made a strap for someone. I then, you were mentioning, Dorset and Crimson, and I went on a course with them. Well, it must be seven years ago now, and that I was their advanced course, and it was making a semi-hollow body with my own neck. That was the first neck that I ever made from scratch as well. Was from that course, and it was with, I forget his last name, but Christian was the guy that taught me, and he was an amazing luthier. And we came up with a semi-hollow Les Paul shaped guitar, and from then on I made everything from scratch. So in fact, I don't know if you can see the blue one there is that was guitar number 4. So the crimson one was guitar number 3, and that blue one there was guitar number 4. And to this day, people still pick that up as sort of one of the demo guitars, and want a guitar like that, which I find incredible. That guitar number 4 is still something that's selling guitars for me. 7 years later.
It's fantastic.
I'm constantly amazed how many builders don't play. It kind of seems like in the rest of the world, those who can't teach in the guitar world, I think a lot of people are just drawn to it and, just don't wind up being players, and maybe those who can't build.
Maybe. I mean, I took a couple of lessons, and then I'll be honest, building them takes so much, or was back then, took so much time that I didn't have time to practice. Or when I did have time to practice, I was so tired, because back then I was doing a 9 to 5, which wasn't. It was more of an 8 till 7, and then I'd be coming home doing 2 hours in the workshop because I had orders that needed to be fulfilled, and then the weekend there was 2 days in the workshop as well. So it was literally like having two jobs, which I'm sure is the same for most people when they're starting out. And then 4 years ago in March, I went full time making the guitars. So I guess now I probably do have more time and I could get into it, but I've got enough from those few lessons that I can set the guitar up and someone else much better than me can play it.
I know personally I want to play more, but given when I have a moment, would I rather be playing my guitar or building a new one? I'd rather be in the workshop building. So if I had all the time in the world, I would still probably spend more of it building and less of it playing.
Yeah.
That's the thing that drives me at the moment.
Yeah.
It was different when I was playing live. So pre-lockdown, I was in a covers band. We'd be playing regularly, and I really enjoyed that. If I had the opportunity to regularly perform, maybe it would be different, because that's something I love. I love the performing, not the practicing and playing.
But there is a huge percentage of builders that just don't play. It's constantly amazed me.
Well, Curtis in the chat, he's one of them. I think he might be learning now, but he got into building before he could play guitar as well.
I'll be honest, I would never have got into building guitars if it wasn't for my son. I had the woodworking and working with materials background, and it just fit. It was the people like them, and great.
So, of course, the big question here is, what do you miss about IT?
Not very much.
Good answer.
Yeah, I was an IT director for a software development company, and it was just dealing with other people's problems that they didn't thank you. They'd caused the problem. Me and my team resolved the problem, and it was just quite thankless, And that was having the guitars as the hobby. That was what kept me sane, I think, because you did have this beautiful thing at the end of it. You've got a physical product, and then somebody's getting that, and the look on their face when they see it, and then when they play it, and that was, and still is, why I do it. The joy of seeing somebody with their new instrument and the joy that they have from something that I've made is what it's all about for me anyway. I said it earlier on, I put a lot of, my heart and soul goes into each instrument, and to the extent that I, not now, but back in the day, I'd be making something, and if I didn't think it was good enough, it wouldn't be finished. I wouldn't put something out that I wasn't happy with, even if it was in the final stages, and it's just like, this just isn't what I want people to think of me, if that makes sense.
Jason, that is a brilliant way to round off today's show. I think that really positive attitude of why you're doing it, and the love of seeing somebody. I think the fact that you can build a guitar and someone can use something you've made to create their own art, their own music with, is incredible.
Definitely.
Brilliant. So look, if anyone's watching or listening in the future, I've put links to Jason's Instagram, YouTube and website, so you can check all of that out. And if you're in Woking, when was the show?
March the 15th.
March the 15th. I hope that goes well. I look forward to hearing how that goes.
Yeah,
and
fingers crossed.
Maybe at some point in the future we can get you back with Lewis and talk about the whole boutique guitar scene in the UK.
I'd definitely be up for that.
Fantastic. So anyone that's interested, you can check out the playlist of past episodes, but also the future ones coming up. I think I've got the next 6 weeks lined up on the playlist. But next week we've got Gio from Tornelli Guitars and Todd from Sweet Tea Guitars to talk about guitar building and also their side project, which is the bench critters, the woodworking tools that they've collaborated on. And Mark made a video about them. Check that out. Fantastic. All right. Thank you, everyone. See you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.
The Guitar Builders Collective is a group of like-minded people from all around the world at different stages of their guitar building journey. You can join us over on our forum to seek advice or share tips on guitar building processes, materials and tools, or just to share your builds. On YouTube, we have a regular podcast of guitar building chat where you can join the live stream or watch back on past episodes. Our Instagram page shares posts of members' builds and links you direct to their accounts. And for those of you on Facebook, we've got a private group that you can join, share and chat along with. The Guitar Builders Collective is a welcome and open space for all, so do pop by and say hi.